I paid for her groceries thinking it was just a kind gesture, but the words she whispered next made my heart stop, and I didn't understand them until it was almost too late. It was a cold winter evening in a small quiet town in America. Snow was falling softly, and the streets looked calm and empty. I had just finished my grocery shopping and my hands were freezing as I walked out of the store. That was when I saw her standing near the exit. She looked tired, her coat was old and thin, and her eyes carried a deep sadness. I noticed she was counting coins with shaking hands trying to pay for her groceries. The cashier looked impatient and people behind her were sighing. I felt something heavy in my chest because she reminded me of my own mother who used to struggle years ago. Without thinking much, I stepped forward and told the cashier I would pay for her groceries. The woman looked at me in shock, her eyes filled with tears. She thanked me again and again, holding my hand tightly. I smiled, thinking it was just a small act of kindness, something simple, something good. I had no idea that this moment would change my life forever. After we left the store together, the cold wind hit our faces and snow continued to fall slowly. She walked beside me quietly, holding her grocery bag close to her chest, as if it was something precious. I asked her if she lived nearby, and she nodded. Then suddenly she stopped walking and looked around, making sure no one was close. Her grip on my arm tightened, and her voice became low and shaky. She leaned closer to my ear and whispered words that made my body feel cold even more than the winter air. She said, "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." I pulled back confused and tried to laugh, thinking maybe she was joking or not well in her mind, but her face was serious. Her eyes looked scared, like she knew something I did not. I asked her what she meant, but she shook her head slowly and told me some things are warnings, not explanations. Then she thanked me one last time, turned around and disappeared into the snowy street, leaving me standing there confused, with her words echoing in my head. All the way back home, her words kept repeating in my mind again and again like a broken record. I tried to ignore them, telling myself it was just a strange comment from a tired, lonely woman, but no matter how hard I tried, they followed me through every turn of the road. When I reached my house, the lights were on inside and everything looked normal. My husband was sitting on the couch watching television like any other evening. He smiled at me and asked about my day, and I smiled back, pretending everything was fine, but inside my heart felt restless. I kept looking out of the window at the yard where fresh snow had covered everything, making it look clean and peaceful. That night I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman's face and heard her whisper again, "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." I wondered why she said when, not if, and what did the snow have to do with anything? I thought about asking my husband, but something inside me stopped me. The house felt different suddenly, too quiet, too heavy, like it was holding secrets I did not yet understand. And as I lay there listening to the wind outside, I felt a strange fear that my life was slowly moving towards something I could not see. The next morning I woke up to the sound of snow crunching underfoot. The yard was covered in thick white layers, and the sunlight reflected so brightly off it that I almost had to squint. I made myself some coffee and tried to shake off the uneasy feeling from last night. I could not stop thinking about the woman's warning. I decided to go outside to clear a small path from the door to the car. My husband came with me, laughing at my careful steps and joking about the snow. I smiled nervously and tried to laugh too, but my mind kept drifting back to her words. Every step I took on the snow felt heavy, as if it was holding something inside or warning me not to go further. I wondered if it was coincidence or some kind of strange intuition from the woman who had asked me not to touch the snow. When my husband left, I kept looking at him as he shoveled the driveway, happily oblivious to my thoughts, and I wondered what would happen if he left for a long trip. What would happen if I touched the snow? And then I remembered the fear in the woman's eyes, the urgency in her voice, the way she held my hand, and I shivered. Even though the sun was shining, the fear stayed with me like a shadow that would not move. I went back inside and tried to focus on breakfast and the small tasks of the day, but even simple things felt heavy, as if the whole day was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And I realized that my life had changed in that small moment outside the grocery store, and nothing would ever feel ordinary again. As the day went on, I tried to act normal, but every little sound and shadow seemed louder and darker than usual. My husband talked about errands and plans for the week, but my mind kept drifting to the woman's warning. I found myself staring at the yard, wondering what she really meant. "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." I tried to recall every detail of her face, every word she said, every hesitation in her voice, and a shiver ran down my spine, thinking that maybe she had seen something that I could not see. I decided to call my best friend to tell her what had happened and maybe get some advice. She listened quietly and laughed nervously at first, but when I repeated the exact words, she went silent and said, "Maybe you should listen to her." She said, "Sometimes people see things we cannot understand," and I felt my heart race even faster. Her words echoed inside me, and I could feel panic rising in my chest. I kept looking at the clock, watching every minute pass, as if time itself was warning me that something important was about to happen. I tried to distract myself with chores and small tasks, but nothing worked. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside felt like a signal. I was trapped between fear and curiosity, and I wondered if the woman's warning was real or if my mind was making it larger than it was. And then my phone rang and my stomach dropped because I did not recognize the number. I picked up the phone with trembling hands and a voice on the other end said, "Hello, is this the woman from the grocery store?" My heart skipped a beat, and I whispered, "Yes, who is this?" The voice sounded calm but urgent. It said, "You do not know me, but I know what the woman told you about the snow. I must warn you again, do not touch it. When he leaves." I froze, and my mind went blank. My husband was in the next room. I could hear him humming to himself, oblivious to the fear that was rising in my chest. I asked who was speaking and how did they know, and the voice said, "I cannot explain everything now, but you must listen." I wrote down every word, trembling as the voice gave me instructions that made no sense yet felt important. I hung up and looked at my husband, who was smiling and unaware, and my chest felt heavy with a mix of fear and responsibility. I wondered if this was all in my head or if something real was happening, something that could change everything. The snow outside looked different now. Darker somehow, and the light reflected strangely, making shadows dance across the yard. I felt trapped between the ordinary life I knew and the strange warning that was pushing me towards something unknown, something that made my heart beat faster and my hands shake. I sat by the window staring at the yard covered in untouched snow. The moonlight reflected off it, making it shine like a strange silver blanket. My hands were cold and my heart pounded in my chest. I could not stop thinking about the woman's words, "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." I tried to focus on anything else, but every sound outside made me flinch. The wind rattled the windows and snowflakes hit the glass like tiny tapping fingers. I kept imagining her face and the urgency in her voice. The memory made my skin crawl. I tried to make myself tea, but my hands trembled so much that I spilled some on the counter. I could feel the hours passing slowly, and my mind raced with possibilities. What if something terrible happened? If I touched the snow? What if the warning was not just a warning, but a sign? I decided to lock all the doors and windows and stay in the living room where the lights were bright and everything felt slightly safer. I wrapped myself in a blanket and tried to breathe, but the fear inside me would not let me calm down. Every creak of the house, every shadow cast by the lights seemed like it was alive, watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. And I realized that the woman's warning was no longer just words, it was a force pressing on me, shaping every thought, every move, every heartbeat. I was trapped in a night that felt endless, and the snow outside looked more mysterious than ever before. Hours passed, and the house was silent except for the wind outside. I could not sleep. I kept pacing from the living room to the kitchen to the hallway. The snow outside glimmered like it was alive and calling to me. I remembered the woman's warning, and my chest tightened. Every shadow in the room seemed to move. When I looked again, it was still, but the fear inside me was real. My phone buzzed, suddenly making me jump. I picked it up and saw a message from an unknown number. It said, "You are alone and you must listen. Do not touch the snow." The words made my hands shake, and I tried to reply, but my fingers would not work. I felt like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I decided to sit down and write everything I remembered about the woman, her warning, the phone call, the strange feelings that had grown in me over the day. I wrote down every detail I could think of, trying to make sense of it, trying to find a clue to understand what was going to happen. The snow outside looked deeper, darker, and I could not stop staring at it. My mind imagined shapes moving beneath the surface, shadows that were not shadows, and I realized that something was hidden in the snow, something she had seen, something she wanted me to avoid, and the fear that I might fail to obey the warning made my heart pound faster and my body shiver uncontrollably. The night felt endless, and the snow outside sparkled under the moonlight like tiny diamonds. I could hear the wind whistle around the house, and every sound made me flinch. I kept remembering the woman's face, her serious eyes, and the trembling urgency in her voice. "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." I wrapped myself tightly in a blanket and sat on the couch trying to think of normal things, but every thought turned back to her words. I imagined what would happen if I did not listen, if I stepped outside or even touched the edge of the snow. The fear in my chest grew heavier and heavier. I tried to call my friend again, but the line was dead, and then I remembered the mysterious message from the unknown number telling me I was alone and had to listen. My hands shook as I held my phone like it was the only lifeline in a world that had suddenly turned strange and dangerous. The clock ticked slowly, and I realized that I could not wait anymore. I had to decide to stay completely away from the snow or risk something I could not even imagine. I looked out of the window again, and the yard looked different. It was not just white and peaceful, it looked like a warning itself. The snow seemed to reflect the moonlight in shapes that made me uneasy. I took a deep breath and promised myself that I would not touch it no matter what happened. My heart raced as I felt the gravity of the woman's warning settling over me like an invisible weight that I could not escape. I stayed on the couch wrapped in my blanket, staring at the snow outside. The moonlight made it glow and shadows danced in shapes that seemed alive. Every creak of the house made my heart jump. I thought about the woman's warning and the mysterious phone call and felt a chill run through my spine. I tried to tell myself it was all in my mind, but the fear was real. It pressed against me like a living thing. I looked at my husband's empty room and imagined him gone for days. And I remembered the words, "Do not touch the snow when he leaves." I shivered thinking of what could happen if I ignored it. I went to the kitchen to get water, but even the small steps felt heavy. Every sound echoed in my ears as if the house itself was warning me. I returned to the couch and sat in silence, listening to the wind outside. Snowflakes hit the window like tiny fingers tapping me. I felt alone and trapped between the ordinary life I had known and the mysterious warning that had entered my life. The fear and curiosity battled inside me, and I knew that the night was far from over, and the snow outside was waiting for me to make a choice that could change everything. I could not take my eyes off the snow. It sparkled under the moonlight like it held secrets. I tried to focus on normal thoughts, but every shadow in the yard seemed to move and whisper warnings in my mind. I thought about the woman's face, the urgency in her voice, the trembling of her hands when she whispered, "Do not touch the snow when your husband leaves." My chest felt tight, and I could not stop thinking what could happen if I disobeyed the warning. I paced the living room trying to distract myself. But every creak of the floorboard, every gust of wind outside made my heart race. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. It said, "The snow is not what it seems. Do not go outside." I held it tightly, afraid to drop it, afraid to miss a message that might save me. My imagination ran wild. I pictured shadows under the snow, shapes moving beneath the surface. I could feel fear and curiosity fighting inside me. My hands shook, and I realized that the woman's warning was no longer just words. It was real. It was a force pressing on me, guiding me, shaping my night, and I knew that if I stepped outside or touched the snow, I could face something beyond my understanding, something that could change everything. I stayed by the window watching the snow and waiting for dawn, my heart racing, my mind unable to rest. The hours dragged slowly, and the house felt heavier. Every shadow seemed to move as if alive. I sat by the window, wrapped in my blanket, staring at the yard. The snow sparkled in the moonlight like a warning. My hands shook, and my heart pounded. I thought about the woman's words, "Do not touch the snow when your husband leaves," and the mysterious messages on my phone. Every sound outside made me jump. Every creak of the house made my chest tighten. I tried to distract myself with small tasks, but my mind kept returning to the snow, to the warning, and to the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I imagined shapes under the snow moving slowly like they were alive, and could sense me looking at them. I felt trapped in a nightmare that seemed real. My fear was growing with every passing minute, and I realized that I could not ignore the warning. I had to obey it no matter what, and yet a strange curiosity battled inside me. A voice in my mind whispered, "What if you see what she saw? What if you discover something no one else has seen?" I shivered and hugged myself tighter. The night felt endless, and the snow outside seemed to pulse with a strange energy, like it knew my thoughts and could punish me if I touched it. The wind howled outside and snow swirled like tiny ghosts dancing in the night. I stayed by the window, unable to take my eyes off it. Every flake seemed to hold a secret. I thought about the woman's warning, and my heart pounded every time I imagined stepping outside. The fear in my chest grew heavier and heavier. I could not stop thinking about the mysterious phone calls and messages. Every sound in the house made me jump. I hugged my knees and tried to breathe slowly, but the fear would not leave me. I imagined shapes moving beneath the snow, shadows that watched me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I could feel a strange energy around the yard, as if it knew I was watching it. I tried to convince myself that it was my imagination, but deep down I knew something was real, and if I disobeyed the warning, something terrible could happen. I sat in silence for hours, watching the snow and the moonlight reflecting off it, making shapes I did not understand. I felt a mixture of dread and curiosity. The night seemed endless, and the snow outside seemed alive, pulsing with a secret I could not see. I could not sleep. The snow outside sparkled under the pale moonlight, and shadows seemed to shift as if alive. Every sound, from the wind to the creaking floors, made me flinch. I kept thinking about the woman's warning and the strange messages I had received. My chest felt tight and my hands shook. I tried to distract myself with small chores, but nothing helped. My mind kept returning to the snow, to the warning, to the feeling that something unseen was watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I imagined shapes moving slowly beneath the snow like they were alive, and could sense me looking at them. Fear and curiosity battled inside me. My heart raced, and I felt trapped in a night that seemed to stretch endlessly. The house was quiet except for the wind, and yet it felt heavy, like it held secrets I did not understand, and every shadow seemed to whisper to me, "Do not touch the snow when your husband leaves." I hugged myself tightly, trying to feel safe, but the snow outside seemed to pulse with a strange energy that I could not ignore. The hours passed slowly, and the snow outside seemed to glow brighter under the moonlight. Every shadow on the ground seemed to shift and move like it had a life of its own. I stayed by the window, wrapped in my blanket, my hands cold, my heart racing. I could not stop thinking about the woman's warning and the mysterious messages on my phone. The words, "Do not touch the snow when your husband leaves," echoed in my mind like a drumbeat. Every sound in the house, every gust of wind made me flinch. I imagined shapes beneath the snow moving slowly, watching me, waiting for me to slip. I tried to distract myself with small tasks, but my mind refused to let go of the thought of what could happen if I ignored the warning. The fear inside me grew heavier with every passing minute, and yet a part of me wanted to know what was hidden beneath the snow, what the woman had seen, what the messages meant. I shivered and hugged myself tighter. The night felt endless, and the snow seemed alive, as if it knew my thoughts and could punish me if I disobeyed. I could not stop staring at the snow outside. It sparkled under the moonlight like it held secrets. Every shadow seemed alive and shifted. When I looked away, my heart raced and my hands shook with fear and anticipation. I thought about the woman's warning and the mysterious messages that told me I was alone and had to listen. I paced the living room, trying to keep my mind busy, but every creak of the floor, every gust of wind outside made me jump. I imagined shapes moving slowly beneath the snow, Watching me waiting for me to make a mistake, I felt trapped between fear and curiosity. My chest tightened, and I realized that the snow was more than just frozen water. It was something powerful, something alive, something that could change everything if I ignored the warning. I hugged myself tightly and whispered a promise to obey every word the woman had said, and yet the urge to understand what lay beneath the snow pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat. I sat in silence for what felt like hours, watching the yard waiting for dawn, but the snow seemed to shimmer with a secret I could not touch. The night was long and the snow outside seemed to glow like it had a life of its own. Every shadow shifted and moved in ways that made my heart race. I stayed by the window wrapped in a blanket, my hands cold, my chest tight with fear. I thought about the woman's warning, do not touch the snow when your husband leaves, and the strange messages that had come to my phone. I tried to calm myself, but the fear would not leave me. I imagined shapes moving beneath the snow, watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. Every gust of wind made the house creak, and every creak made me jump. I felt trapped in a night that stretched endlessly, and I realized that the snow was not ordinary. It pulsed with a secret, something powerful hidden beneath the surface, something that could change everything if I disobeyed. I hugged myself tighter and whispered a promise to obey. I stayed like that, staring at the yard, my mind racing, my heart pounding. The snow outside seemed alive, and every second felt heavier than the last. The first light of dawn barely touched the snow outside, and yet it shimmered like it was alive. I stayed by the window wrapped in my blanket, heart racing, hands shaking. I thought about the woman's warning and the mysterious messages on my phone, do not touch the snow when your husband leaves. Every shadow seemed to move, and every sound from the wind or the creaking floors made me jump. I tried to convince myself that it was all imagination, but deep down I knew it was real. The urge to understand what lay beneath the snow battled with the fear inside me. Every heartbeat echoed in my chest like a drum. I hugged myself tightly and whispered a promise to obey, yet my mind could not stop imagining shapes moving beneath the surface, watching, waiting for me to slip. I felt trapped in a night that had lasted forever, and I realized that the snow held a secret that no one could see, something powerful, something hidden, and I was the only one standing between it and the unknown. The sun finally began to rise, casting a soft golden light over the snow outside. I stayed by the window wrapped in my blanket, heart still racing, hands still shaking. I realized the night had changed everything forever. The snow no longer looked ordinary, it glimmered like it held a secret, a warning that I had followed to the letter. I stepped back from the window, feeling a strange mix of fear, relief, and curiosity. The woman's words echoed in my mind, do not touch the snow when your husband leaves, and I understood now that it was not just snow, it was a test, a sign, something powerful that could have been dangerous if ignored. I took a deep breath and smiled at myself for obeying the warning and surviving the night. The house was quiet, the wind had calmed, the shadows seemed still, and for the first time since the grocery store encounter, I felt peace. I knew I would never forget the woman's warning, the mysterious messages, the fear that had gripped me, and the strange alive snow that had changed my night forever. I hugged myself and promised to remember always that small acts of kindness and listening to warnings, even when they make no sense, can protect you from things you do not yet understand. And as the sunlight touched the snow, I felt a strange warmth, knowing that I had faced the unknown and emerged stronger.